Chris Tremaine.
I move that the question be now put.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chair, referring to the title and commencement, you could argue that, given the debate and the points that have been made tonight, this bill could be better called the Sentencing and Parole Hoax on Victims Bill, because this bill, it was interesting, I read an article that Deborah Coddington wrote, and Deborah Coddington is a former member, as we know, of the ACT Party, and it's interesting, I think she may have been a founding member, I don't know, but she made an interesting point, because she said even this bill was not an ACT bill, not of the original ACT Party, the original, that's the word she used, Mr Hipkins is right, the original Liberal ACT Party before Rodney Hyde got his claws in. And it was interesting, the comments that she made, and she talked about some Liberal reforms that the ACT Party was built on, not only in this area, but in other areas of policy. This could be described as a hoax on victims, because what it does is it does two things. It tugs at the heartstrings of victims, and it raises victims' expectations substantially. And I would wager that this bill, when passed for a time, will be eminently popular, because it's a great slogan, everybody can remember it, 3 strikes, it will be popular for a time. And victims will have a high expectation of what it can deliver for them. And that's fair enough, and I don't blame victims or members of our community who sadly may be future victims, or members of our community who truly believe that this will be the answer to all ills in our criminal justice system. So it will be popular, and I know what will be said at the next election, because of course this piece of legislation, given that we won't see the ultimate effects for 5 to 7 years, it will be very difficult to argue one way or t'other on the election stump as to its merits or lack of it. And that's part of the hoax that the ACT Party and the National Party has put in place. A nice little strategic sort of political triangulation. Let's put it a bit like the Offenders Levy Bill, which comes into force in July of next year, not too many months before, I suspect, the next general election. So the only time we'll be able to really scrutinise and see the practical effects of this bill will be well after the next election cycle. That, I'd argue, is very, very deliberate. And this will be a notch in the post for Mr Garrett, a legislative notch on the belt, and Mr Hyde will be able to go and tick the box with the Sensible Sentencing Trust and say, we've done the deal, we've delivered. The deal's been clinched with the Sensible Sentencing Trust. Yep, he says, yep, the deal's been clinched. We all know what the deal was too. But then we're going to have a time in this chamber when members of Parliament will have to revisit this legislation. And the crime figures will continue to go up. And it's interesting under this minister, or not this minister and the chair, in fairness, under Ms Collins, that categories of violent crime, I think the worst murder rate for 20 years, under this minister, but that was all going to be absolved. You know, everything would change when this government got into power. So there will be people listening to this tonight who will disagree with me vehemently and the Labor Party position. And they will say we are wrong, and they will say, some will even say we're soft because we're opposing the bill. I don't have any angst against those folks out there at all, because they have a genuine belief that this legislation will deliver for them. They've been conned, as my colleague said. Yes, they have.
Point of order, Mr Tremaine.
You brought to the attention of the Honourable Leanne Dalziel the matter of relevancy. I've let this speech go on for some time now without bringing the speaker to order.
No. I hear what the member says. I did mention to his colleague earlier on that we are on clauses 1 and 2, title and commencement, and you have a minute to go. I'd like to actually hear the title and commencement mentioned in the remaining minute. Honourable Clayton Chisholm. Point of order, Honourable
Point of order. You might want to recall, Mr Chair, that I mentioned my suggested amendment to the title in the first sentence I made and moved on from there.
That's not a point of order. I'm inviting the member to continue. The member has the call.
I intend to continue, sir. And I'll repeat again for your edification, sir, because maybe the speaker system isn't working.
That is a challenge to my ruling. I've ruled. I'm inviting you to continue. We don't need any further discussion on it. Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Well, I'll repeat the first sentence I made in my speech, which was I said this. that an appropriate title for this bill would be the Sentencing and Parole Hoax on Victims Bill. That's what I said in the first sentence of the debate. And, pardon? Oh, well, sorry.
Look, we don't need to get into this sort of nonsense that's going on. I'm inviting the member to... I'm on my feet. I'm inviting the member to continue, and we'll ask you just to, in the spirit of the hour, just to continue, and we're talking about clauses 1 and 2. I hear what the member said. Please continue.
I won't respond to the member over there. He may choose to use unparliamentary language. I won't. But as I've said, we will get on to it, I say to that member, and we will be back here, whether that member's in the House or not, in some years, and we will revisit the Hansards of that member, who I don't think's made a contribution in the whole debate. And I invite him, if you'd like to get up and make a contribution. It may be, I think he has a legal background as well. He may be able to make a substantial contribution to the bill, rather than standing over there and doing an imitation, Mr Chair,
Honourable Clayton Cosgrave,
doing an imitation of the member who's near Trevor what's his name? Who's near Trevor Mallard's electorate, who's Paul Quinn, doing an imitation of Paul Quinn, sort of squawking from the sidelines. This is a very, very important piece of legislation. Whether we disagree with it or not, it is substantial. It will have huge impact. We would argue negatively. So I say to that member, if you'd like to make a contribution, stand up, get on his feet and make one, because we'd enjoy listening to it. But I don't think it's going to happen. As he sips his glass of water, I'll talk about the bill all right, because I say this, that there is a very, very high expectation of victims on this. And that is the problem, because those victims expect this to deliver for them. They expect it will have a deterrent effect. So they expect, as they've been told, that criminals, before they commit a crime, will think, hang on, I'm on a first strike or a second strike, or I have been warned by the judge, I might walk out the door of the house and not do what I came here to do, whether that be murder or rape or any of the heinous crimes. I don't have faith in the criminal element to make those sort of mental calculations as they're about to commit a crime. That they're going to stand there and say, well, hang on, the judge warned me if I do this again. I think there are dangers for victims. It may well be the case that the ultimate tactic of the criminal elements is not to maim but to kill, because if I kill, there is one less witness that can testify against me. There are dangers, as my colleague Leanne Dalzell has said, for our police force and for our corrections officers, because if I am incarcerated for the rest of my days, there is nothing to lose. You look at Graham Burton as I speak to the title, sir, at the activities that he's engaged in, because he ain't getting out. He ain't getting out anytime soon. He won't be getting out at all. And I suspect that he's determined that anything goes in prison, and the human carnage that he has left and the threat that he poses to prison officers and those that come into contact with him, I say is an awful prospect going forward. He should never be allowed out, but it does show. It does show what can happen. I say, sir, this is a more appropriate name, a hoax on victims bill, because we have been told in the Select Committee by officials, and I repeat again, that it is eminently possible, because we did ask them repeatedly, that a person who commits a first strike offence, a grievous offence, may get a shorter sentence than a third striker who commits a less grievous offence. We asked the officials that specific question. Is that possible under this legislation? And we have professional officials. They answered yes, it is possible. I'm glad to see the Minister of Justice here. I'm sure maybe after this long sort of absence from the fight, absence from the debate, I don't mean physical, of course, sir, I mean verbal, absence from the process, that Simon Power, being the reformer that he says he is, will want to take a call in support of his Minister of Police, who has taken this bill, wrenched it from his grasp, given that he tried to hang on to that bill for so long. It was pot-riveted, the cabinet paper, to his part of the cabinet desk. He held it for so long, superglued to it, did not want to get away from it. Wanted to take this through in all stages, but he was rolled and the Minister of Police said, no, I'm doing it.